So we are going to start in 30 seconds. 30 seconds, so if you could find your seats. We want to make sure that we start on time because we're live streaming. If you could please find a seat, thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. So my name is Meg Garlinghouse, and I lead our social impact efforts at LinkedIn. And on behalf of LinkedIn, EY, and the National Mentoring Partnership, I could not be more thrilled to welcome you guys here. We are hopeful that over the next couple of hours that you are going to learn a whole lot more about mentorship and, more importantly, leave inspired to get involved. And as you know, there's some extraordinary nonprofits around the room who are here to enable you to take action even tonight. So why does LinkedIn care about mentorship? Well, LinkedIn, we think about marketplaces and networks, and we have this belief, actually we know that there's extraordinary amount of appetite on both sides of the marketplaces. According to our data, and now actually on LinkedIn, you can check a box that says you're interested in mentoring, and there's almost 7 million people who've done that. So there's this huge amount of people who want to mentor. And of course, we know there's a huge amount of students who are looking for mentees. So we're in this extraordinary, unique position, but we're also challenged about how to make those matches happen in a way that's impactful to the individuals we're trying to serve. So we also believe that mentorship is absolutely key to unlocking economic opportunity, particularly for those who weren't born into opportunity. And it was actually EY who enlightened us to this belief. They've done some extraordinary research that really proves this, that mentorship can really unlock economic opportunity for individuals and connect them to networks that can be game-changing for their lives. So how many people in the audience had someone in their life who made a material impact in their career? Exactly. So what we aspire is that every hand around the world, around our country, will go up when that question's asked 20 years from now. So why are we partnering with Mentor? So for those of you who are not familiar with the National Mentoring Partnership, they're actually an extraordinary organization. They do a ton of work in policy, advocacy, training, and support for the hundreds of affiliates around the country. But the one place where they do not have a presence is California. So that is why we are here today, to make sure that we are welcoming them to our state and hoping to make sure that they can find some affiliates here to provide their extraordinary impact. So a couple logistical items before I introduce David Shapiro. Most importantly, bathrooms. It is a bit of a long program, and the bathrooms are out that door and around the corner on the left. Secondly, most important thing are beverages. So the soft stuff is out there, and the more interesting stuff is what you guys saw on the way in. There will be more food, actually some delicious desserts at the end of the program. And even more importantly, thanks to the generosity of EY, we're giving out these, as you guys know, the super cool new Swell bottles for those of you who make it till the end. Yeah. You're excited about the Swell bottle? Yeah, me too. This will be my first Swell bottle. All right, so David. So for those of you who've not met him, David Shapiro is the CEO of Mentor. He's been the CEO, I believe, for almost 5 years, but he's spent almost his entire career in the mentorship space. He may be one of the most knowledgeable people about mentorship, and he certainly is the most inspiring person I know when it comes into nonprofit leaders in our country, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have him here with us tonight.
Thanks so much. Well, the only thing we did right was definitely to promise you food and swag at the end to keep you here. So that was Meg's wisdom. But thank you so much to Meg, and so grateful for all of you for being here. You know, in the mentoring movement, probably than in any other movement in the country, we say that you express your values with your time. And for all of you to be here spending your time with us, either as part of the movement or looking for engagement in the movement, that it just speaks volumes of the kind of community we have in this room, and it means a great deal. I want to also acknowledge the extraordinary mentoring organizations that are in our midst in this community that were around the room, and you'll hear a little bit more about some of them throughout the night. Have a chance to visit with them after the program. And then we also have an amazing, what I call the Coalition of the Willing, mentoring programs and leaders who have been trying to, outside of their day jobs, running direct service mentoring programs, get an affiliate going for Mentor. And you'll meet a lot of them as well here tonight with the burgeoning California Mentoring Partnership. So I really just want to give a hand, because most of our work is not possible in America. You can't bolster a movement without thousands of incredible social entrepreneurs running mentoring programs. So I want to thank the mentoring movement folks in the room. And partnerships are really at the core of our work to build this movement, to ensure that all young people have the relationships they need to strive and thrive. And it's powerful partnerships that made tonight possible. About a year ago, we began working with LinkedIn on a campaign to celebrate members mentoring relationships and have an opportunity to pay it forward. Since then, we've connected LinkedIn's volunteer marketplace with our mentoring connector. And to this day, the majority of the referrals we get from people interested in mentoring come from LinkedIn's volunteer marketplace. It's made a marked difference in connecting people to mentoring opportunities. Meg, she walks the walk. She came to DC and spoke at the National Mentoring Summit and talked to the movement about using LinkedIn as a powerful tool to get more people engaged in the mentoring movement. And they have looked time and time again for ways to connect young people, including the pilot they now have in career counseling. We're so grateful for them hosting us here tonight. Meg may tell the story at some point. I'll preempt her a little bit by the fact that I sort of ambushed her 5 minutes before she was speaking in front of 1,000 people and said, will you host us out in California? She's made good on that promise, so I appreciate it. And EY, you're going to meet Nancy Altobello in a little bit, but you also, in Deborah Holmes and so many of the leaders at EY, this is a company that decided that mentoring was a core value inside the company, but also that they were going to figure out how to do it outside of EY's walls. And you're going to hear about College Map. They also said to us, as Meg alluded, let us unlock and sort of give you the credibility as one of their peers what the private sector can do in mentoring. They did that 4 years ago with a piece that you'll see around the room around private sector engagement and mentoring. They stand with us here tonight. To me, the great example of any great mentor, 4 years later, still standing by us as partners. So you'll hear more about EY, and we're really grateful for their partnership. And we all know, the names that won't get mentioned tonight are the names of the people who actually do most of the work to pull these things off. And I want to thank, Deborah and Nancy's team at EY, Meg's team at LinkedIn, our team at Mentor, for just making this come together, making it, hopefully an enjoyable evening for you guys, especially when you're not listening to me. And I just want to thank all the people that made it possible. Whether in the nonprofit, the public sector, or the private sector, or just acting as an individual, so much of the present and potential of the mentoring movement in the Bay Area is in this room. We're all here to make sure that we act on the belief of the great Bill Russell, who grew up not far away and was one of the founders of Mentor, who said, in the United States of America, there is no such thing as other people's children. And I thank you all for being here to investigate on that. I'm just going to do about 5 minutes of context, I promise you, not a lot of propagandizing here. But I do want to give you a little bit of high-level context for what's coming up. So Mentor was really founded on an engineering problem, a problem of both social justice, of math, which was that you had Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, which had been a great leader in mentoring for 100 years. At the time, had proof of concept, had proved mentoring worked. They had 200,000 kids matched in America. The thought was, if we're going to serve the 9 million 8 to 18-year-olds living in single guardian households in poverty at that time, a persistent number that hasn't changed that much, we're going to need to start a movement. In business terms, we don't need one vertical, we need a category. And so Mentor was founded, as Meg talked about, to try to provide on-ramps, to provide training and standards and policy and influence strategy and awareness so the mentoring movement could grow and we could try to close that gap. And as you'll see, due to the work of not Mentor, but social entrepreneurs around this country, individuals stepping up, public and private sector investment of time and money, we have tenfold expanded the number of kids in formal mentoring relationships in America, trying to drive quality at the same time we're driving quantity. So what's the gap, right? This is always the kind of 1-2 punch, give you the good news, give you the bad news. The bad news is the study we did a couple years ago, the mentoring effect, based on a nationally representative survey of young people, we still have 1 in 3 young people. And let me explain to you how we came up with don't have a mentor, because I think it might be even more dire than you might be thinking. We asked young people who were 18 to 24, in your growing up, in times of struggle and times of triumph, was there anyone outside your house you could turn to? Not a mentor who met with you once a week at a school, a mentor of any kind outside your family. 1 in 3 young people said no one. So for me, as a person who cannot remember a moment when I didn't have adults hovering around through school, sports, home, saying, what can I do for you? What dream do you have? What can I connect you with it? And who has the luxury and privilege of raising my children the same way, this is the thing that keeps me up at night. This is the road less to travel. This is the clarion call. Progress made, a gap that makes no sense, and a gap that will make sure that inequity in this country remains. Why does this happen? And there's been there's tons of different things you can read, and frankly, I think inequality has been in our news in more responsible ways. But 2 things that you can check out if you want to sort of, become more acquainted with this dire issue that faces our country is Bob Putnam's Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis, and then America's Promise has put out 2 great reports, Don't Call Them Dropouts and Don't Quit on Me, which channel the voices of young people. And the story they tell, by the way, is one of these stories, right? Like all research and stories, you hear them and you're kind of like, no duh, but the point still needs to be made, which is that kids said, don't call me a dropout, because kids didn't decide to be a dropout. Kids don't grow up that way. They became disconnected little by little when institutions let them down, and they felt they were not successful. And no one was there to say, persist, because the stress was so much. And in Don't Quit on Me, Bob Putnam revisits the place he grew up, Port Clinton, Ohio, and talks about how separate the community has become, the way in which it was once invested in each other, and the way in which now there are 2 very different Port Clintons that are growing up next to each other. Probably a familiar theme you've heard in any major city you've been in recently. And so, the question becomes, what do we do about this inequity? Bob Putnam established that affluent kids are 4 times more likely to have natural mentors. So a lot of people ask this question. I want to make sure this is one point that no one comes to the conclusion on. You're going to hear from some young men in a little bit who we talked a lot about this. This is not a problem of love or caring or effort by parents or guardians. This is a practical problem of what economic distress does to families. This is a practical problem of when you're working 3 jobs, when you have an inflexible job that you can't telecommute from, it's a little bit hard to show up at school for a young person. If you can't pay for lots of enrichment activities, less adults are just getting in front of your kid for him to find his passions and find connections. So this is a lot of a volume problem that faces folks that are in distress who can't get their kids in front of as many mentors. Maybe student-to-teacher ratios, maybe overstressed schools. There's a lot of reasons why kids don't get connected with mentors. Very few of them that I've ever seen have to do with love or effort. They usually have to do a lot more with practical concerns of growing up. So I'm going to continue with this kind of rope-a-dope, here's the good news, here's the bad news. So coming from that, what buoys us a little bit, and I came to the slide a little bit early and was still talking about some of the more dire news, but what buoys us is that the president's my brother's keeper. The work of the Golden State Warriors and this phantasmic thing that was the best thing in the world, and you'll see tangibly why it was more than just a commercial in a minute. But there are forces coming together that are calling people to relationship, that are calling people to collective ownership for our children, are calling people to shared prosperity, accountability, and responsibility for our kids. So let me just show you this for 1 second, because I'm here and I love showing this and got to show it here, of course. And we're so thankful to the Warriors.
This looks good. You don't need this little clip art over here. So let's take that out. Incredible dancer. I don't know if people are going to believe you.
I see.
You sure want to do that?
Yeah, set me up.
All right. First time I saw the White House was in 1984. I just graduated from college. I was working as a community organizer out of the Harlem campus of the City Colleges in New York. You gotta have your elbow in a little bit. All right, release. Make sure it's on your fingertips.
Maybe I should shoot lefty.
You can try that.
I got one shot at this. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. That's science right there. I'm really proud of you, man. That's a wonderful volcano.
Thank you, man.
You don't need all the time in the world or all the answers to be the mentor someone needs. And you don't need to be an NBA star or the President of the United States to be someone's hero.
Support my brother's keeper.
Be a mentor.
Make the time. Go to mentor.gov and mentor in real life.
I felt like I should have quit the day after that happened. Because, and Gail is here, and she'll talk a little bit later, can tell you more about how that all came together. It was about 14 minutes. These guys are just as good at doing that as they are at their day jobs. And literally, they were taking things from the White House Science Fair from the other room. I also feel like whoever makes Connect 4, I don't know who it is, but they should be paying us some sort of like endorsement royalty. Because that was totally natural that Connect 4 happened in both places, in the mentoring program in DC and with the president. But anyway, so that's been, part of what's happened. I wanted to show you this because I know we're, in the world of big data and the world of metrics. So that comes on, and the NBA gives us airtime, which was a huge part of that, as well as what they did in January, what LinkedIn did for us earlier in the year. Kendrick Lamar did a spot, which was the first time my mentee, Keontae, ever had any idea or any interest in what I do for a living. He literally asked me if Kendrick could call his girlfriend. I was like, I never really met Kendrick. He just made the spot when we sent him the script. But this is a very real spike, right? And that's double the number of people inquiring about becoming a mentor from one year to the next. And you see in April of 2015, almost nothing happens for us. In April of 2016, it's a crazy spike. And this is what happens every time people use their platforms, obviously not quite as much as the most popular and powerful people on the planet, but every time people use their platforms, companies, government, to call people to mentoring, we see these kinds of spikes. So this is my last slide, I promise. There's a lot on it, but I'm just gonna kind of summate it real quick. So these are what we call the paths forward. There's 7 of them, and I realize that in the campaign season, especially this one, maybe we should only have like 3-point plan instead of 7. Some of it just involving sanity. But this is just the 7 paths forward that we put to what it will take to close the mentoring gap, all in partnership. I only put it up there, one, because you see private sector engagement, which is a big part of what brings us here today. And there's so many leaders in this room. I know that Chevron was going to be in the room, and we just did something with them on STEM and mentoring. I mean, there's so many people finding their way into this movement. But you see integration around national challenges like My Brother's Keeper, which is being done here locally. You see something Theo Miller and I have talked about a lot, which you're going to hear more from Theo about. How do you get the kids that need mentors the most mentors, and how do you do that in a proportional way that gets them the mentoring they need? Policy changes that lever relationship and don't look at it as rainbows and puppy dogs, but look at it as hunger, food, clothing, and essential, the social capital that kids need to succeed. Quality, making sure all mentoring is quality. The last thing we want to do is create another abandonment in the life of a kid who's already had relationships that may or may not have been quality. Private sector engagement, time and money. Companies have the ability to bring ingenuity and innovation and their people's capital of time and investment. Research to practice, how do we just make that line even less of a bridge between what we're finding out works in mentoring and what people on Main Street who are pressured every day by wait lists are actually putting into their mentoring programs. And then a lot of innovation, which I would call, and Meg, something we've talked a lot about with LinkedIn, technology-enabled solutions. Not technology is the solution, but technology-enabled solutions that make it easier to engineer this problem and close the mentoring gap. But every path forward that ever is important in the mentoring movement starts and ends by listening to the voices of young people. There's no other better informant. All the rest is periphery. And so what I want to do next is call up 3 guys, Devin, Eli, Herbert, wherever you guys are. Come on up, and if you guys don't mind sitting in these 3 seats. Yeah, please. I'm going to flip all the pages I ignored so I can now talk to you guys. So I promise we have nowhere to go but up from this point in the evening on. My spiel is over. Purely facilitator from here on out. So I want to introduce you to these three guys. I've had an absolute privilege to meet and learn from these guys in the last couple of weeks in prepping for this. And every time Julie and I came away from talking to one of these three young men, it sort of was a reminder of why you're trying to pull off an event to call people to mentoring, because their stories and their voices are powerful and instructive, and they're very much their own. So let me tell you what they're doing now professionally, and then I'll ask them a few questions about their journeys. Herbert Castillo is an operations and development associate at 1 Degree. Eli Talau, hopefully I did that, senior tech fellow at the City and County of San Francisco in the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. Shortest title in the world. Devin Ross is a junior project coordinator at Gap. So I was prepping with these guys, and Devin said, I didn't hear anything you just said. All I saw was, I'm getting the first question. So I thought that was pretty astute. So he was like, I was just going to play off other people. What's this all about? So he's got good instincts. So Devin, I just want you to lead off. We talk about calling people and companies to mentor, right? And I think a lot of folks, through no fault of their own, don't understand why kids don't get connected to mentors. It's obviously different for all different young people. But you talked a lot to me about moving from Southern California to Northern California at 20. And one of the main points you kept saying to me was there was nothing for me in Palmdale, where you had grown up, and how different things happened for you once you came up here. So I just thought if you could talk a little bit about growing up, sort of how you got to the point where you felt like there was nothing for you there, and then what sort of changed for you once you moved up here, if that makes sense. And you can always, the best advice I can give all you guys, which you probably already got, you don't have to answer the question I asked. You can just say what you want to say. But that's sort of the political, watch politicians. They never answer the question they're asked. But go ahead, Devin. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think when I was younger, my mom always worked like a night shift 5 days a week as a nurse in Inglewood. So we lived in Palmdale, which is like 45 minutes north of LA. So we moved away, and that was for the better, because when we were younger, we got robbed in Inglewood, so we moved away. So I think from 2nd grade to 12th grade, I always walked home from school. And when I got home from school, nobody was home. So it was just me. I had an older sister, but she was out with her friends. So I would come home and just sit in my room and wait for my mom to call and run to the phone and talk to her and stuff like that. And also, so when I turned 18, all I knew was get a job and go to school. But the problem is, in Palmdale, you're fighting with people twice my age, and I'm 23, for like jobs at McDonald's as a cashier. And so that's kind of not worth it. And then there's no one to actually tell you what you need to enroll in school. So that was really tough for me, trying to get a job and going to school, plus my mom was never there. So she was working hard to keep a roof over my head. So one day I woke up, and you just get tired of it. And so after 2 years out of high school with no job, I was just like, I need to leave. So I contacted my dad in San Francisco, and I flew up here. And one of the first places I went to was Europe, the organization I'm from. And I went there, and they told me I was too late. But I went in and I talked to somebody at City College. Her name was Harriet, and she knew somebody at Europe, and she helped me get in. And the thing about Europe was that they're going to give you that help. They're always going to push you to the next step. And there was no, wow, maybe nobody's going to help me. Somebody always helped me at Europe. Somebody always pushed me to the next step and gave me the things I need to be successful and get through the program and get the job that I have now.
Thanks so much, Devin. I promise, I'm sure you're going to want to clap after every answer, but we'll do it at the end because I want to hear from these guys. Herbert, so your family had a little bit further move than from Southern to Northern California. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the move to East Palo Alto, and then how that kind of played out for you in terms of challenges, opportunities, connections, what that experience was like.
Well, I can start by saying that it takes a Caltrain ride to know that this is no longer the place that I grew up. There's something to be said about my journey to California and eventually to San Francisco. I was born in El Salvador in '93, for those of you who know, in the middle of a civil war. So at the time, my family is seeking political asylum, made it to the United States. I was a year and a half years old, so don't ask me about the flight or if I enjoyed the weather or any other details like that. But I can tell you that we arrived in East Palo Alto, for those who can remember, in kind of the mid-90s, the murder capital of the Bay Area, to a larger extent in the United States. And so to have the experience of leaving a country locked in war, only to arrive in one that is in the middle of a drug and gang war, and to feel the pressure that the mentors, those who you could ask for what was supposed to happen, were a few years older than me. They were not high school graduates. They had jobs. They brought money home. That was what I had to look up to. That was what I expected that success could be. The reality for me is that in East Palo Alto, as an immigrant with a mother who doesn't know the language or who can go to bat for you and who can tell your white teachers that I don't speak English yet, to have that satisfaction of knowing that there were people who took that time and the pressure off of me to say, you probably have no idea what's going on right now. And maybe sorry. But apart from that, there were people who always saw in me what I didn't see in myself. Everything that I had taken away from me, that I didn't get to learn, that I didn't get the opportunity to feel like education was my path forward, I had somebody tell me, you're wrong, you're gonna be fantastic. You need to stick at this, and I'm gonna help you, guide you, and be the person who has the experience that you can put faith into.
Eli, good luck, man. Yeah.
I'm supposed to follow up that. Really?
It might have been better to go first. I don't know. No, you're up to the challenge. No. So Eli, I thought it was interesting when we talked a little bit about growing up in Hunters Point, and sort of, I asked you a question, right? I said, did you have mentors growing up? And you said, yeah, I did. I had mentors in sports. I was an athlete. So I said, so kind of like, what is the gap? What are we gonna talk about then? And you talked a lot about being in this place where, you know, the word technology is thrown out constantly, and it's another economy, and for you, not so much, and just that practicality. So can you just talk a little bit about that journey, what you were aware of, and what you became aware of?
Yeah, definitely in Hunters Point, you know, as a kid, you're more trying to escape the violence, you know, especially like how rough it is. And you don't really hear much about the tech sector, you know, and then recently, because of the tech boom, a lot of San Francisco natives are against it. You know, they're like, oh, they're kicking us out of the city, they're pushing us out. And so, yeah, pretty much, you don't really hear much about it. And then a lot of times people just feel like, or young kids especially that were my age, they just feel like, oh, you know, the tech sector is like an imaginary world. Like, we can't get there, you know. We're gonna be fine. Like, we'll go work at McDonald's or something, or, you know, sling drugs or something. That's how young kids thought, you know, and they see all these things around them, like a lot of negative things, and they think it's cool for them, you know. So that's what like pushed them towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what bridged that gap for you from it being like a foreign world to something you could access?
Definitely. I reached out to Meta, Mission Economic Development Agency. Found out that they had a tech school, and one of the things that drew me towards them was that I was getting paid to go there. You know, as a kid, you like, oh, money, yes. Like, you're paying me to come to school? Like, do this every time, and you won't have a dropout, like, at all. No, seriously.
There's some people from San Francisco Unified in the room. Maybe they'll think about that.
So, yeah, and basically, like, I met up with the program director, Leo Sosa, and he just told me about how, you know, it's like a 3-month boot camp pretty much, and you get to learn like soft skills and hard skills on just technology. And that was one of the best things. So like, oh, you mean I can like create a computer? Like, I never had a computer before. Like, okay, cool, let me do this. You know, and especially since they serve like low income immigrant communities that like helped me out a bunch. And so, yeah,
awesome.
that's what like bridged that gap for me.
That's great. So I want to invite everybody over there if you want to. There are a lot of seats over here, and nobody's going to care if you walk over here. Make yourself comfortable. Plus, we have an interest in you not being uncomfortable standing because we still have a little bit to go. So Devin, you talked a little bit about that first meeting with your Year Up mentor. May not have gone exactly as planned. And then also how LinkedIn, I just thought it was ironic since we're here, how LinkedIn factored into your initial approach to that relationship. Can you just talk a little bit about how that all went from the beginning so everyone doesn't think it's a fairy tale?
I love telling this story.
Sure your mentor does too.
My mentor does not like this story. So during our internship seminars at Year Up, where we go every Wednesday, we're appointed a mentor. So they just give us one based on our personality and where we're at. So we're given stickers. So you get a sticker, and then when your mentor shows up, he gets a certain sticker, and you pretty much have to go around like matching stickers to see who your mentor is, kind of like a weird blind date or something. So everyone's meeting their mentor and stuff like that, looking all happy and stuff, and I'm just like, where's mine? And I'm like, nobody's there. So I get told that he's stuck at work, so I'm like, oh, great. So I think I went home that night, and I went on LinkedIn, and I looked him up, started stalking him. And I was like, yeah, he doesn't know what he's in for. I'm going to know everything about him. So. And then so when we finally met at the Grove and we went out to eat, I was just telling him all about him, not about me, about him. And I was like, you kind of left me like a kid at school, just standing there. But yeah, but he was really astonished about how I just went and started looking him up and wanted to know about him because he knew I wanted a mentor. I wanted the opportunities that he can give me and the things that he teach me. So he was very impressed by that. So you have to want the opportunities and go out there and show them that you want.
And cyber stalking is a very important skill in the professional world. So I think Eli touched a little bit on this, Herbert, but I wanted to touch on it with you too. Your initial attraction to Build, right? I don't think it was I'm just looking for a wonderful mentor. And I think it's good for people to know the reality of what moves the needle for kids to get engaged in things. So I just wonder if you could talk about that and then talk about from there how that engagement, what it's meant to you.
Thank you for the setup.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Yeah. Well, I was laughing so hard because as somebody who I thought I was 13. I was about to enroll into high school. And my first thought was, how do I bring money to the house? How do I help my mom? How do I do these things that I need to provide? And this is my mother who has, put in me that education is going to be the path. At this point, I'm in high school, or about to go into high school. And a lot of that came from a mentor who was pretty much 8 months older than me, but who had the experience of having gone through the class already. And it was Build, located over on that side of the room, set around entrepreneurship as a means of access to kids to get excited about school, and then a college access program. Two of the things that I really want to get into with Build, obviously it was the aspiration to say, do you want to be an entrepreneur and do you want to make money? I didn't know how to spell the first. I knew how to make money. So I was in. Build was literally a group of people and a building, right? Not so much different than this, but to me, Build was a workplace. Build was my motivator. I mean, damn it, Build was literally just sometimes the person who could listen to the problems that I had. It's not to say that my mom would not have been that person or that I would not have been crying in her arms later that night, but I needed professionals. I needed people who had other perspectives that came from different places. What Build gave me was quite literally a home. Just people who taught me that I had worth. People that loved me. When you seek out those places, you thrive. I want to kind of leave you with these two infamous people in my life. Ray Faustino, who was the head of the peninsula site of Build at the time, we were on a class tour to visit USC. The first time that I was going to visit colleges, I was in for the dining room. I had pretty much, at this point, wanted to go to school so I could go see Reggie Bush and to go see the trophies. I mean, honestly, this is not an academic, there's not an economic or an academic reason. At first, remind you that I come from East Palo Alto watching sports. So, on my drive to USC, we're on the bus, and I sit down next to Ray, and I literally just cried. I don't know how to put you all in what my life was then, but it had not only the lack of confidence, but a sense that the divide in me as a Hispanic and as an American were at odds, that these were things that were always going to provide either barriers or advantages, and that I couldn't understand either how to make friends, how to make mentors, how to go to college. Why does some little kid from East Palo Alto with nothing deserve to be here and deserve to be proud? The reality is that I learned that day that I was a hybrid. This is now just unfortunate as a result of the Priuses, but it was amazing. I was a hybrid and I could scream it from everywhere. My duality of culture was gonna set me off in a direction where people didn't even know what I was saying because I was speaking Spanish. The other person who became influential to me is Hollis Bischoff. She was my college counselor put together through Build. Honestly, look here, I had a college counselor. It's pretty impressive through Build. And I can tell you that there's this funny thing that happens where even though I had a lack of resources as a kid, I was pretty much 17, and as if most of you know, I knew everything. I knew what I wanted, of course, and I wanted to go to a big school. I'm from California. I would need to go to a big UC. I'm going to study economics. I'm going to go to Harvard Business School or something, and bam, you know, like that is what I assumed success was. And I was pretty much applying to most of my schools, and my college counselor would always tell me to apply to Babson, this small liberal arts school in the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts. And I would tell her all the time, as if I'm going to go back to some liberal arts high school to go and waste my time. I'm going, they don't even have a football team. Are you kidding me? And, you know, again, I know everything. So I knew what I wanted. And yet, here was somebody that was ready to sit me down and say, look, Herbert, your mom loves you. She won't tell you this, but you need to really get a grip. You need to understand that, like, this is what college is for. It's going to be about giving you the opportunities to realize the change that you need to see, not only in your communities, but in the world at large. And if you want to have a choice, if you want to have an opportunity to have that, you need to get serious now. I did. I went to Babson. I turned around everything that I suspected, that I wanted, that I knew, and I had no idea. But again, going back to that, somebody with experience, somebody who had gone to a small liberal arts school on the East Coast, believe it or not, managed to get me as well. And that, you know, I'll talk a little bit more about my post, but a huge representation of, again, this idea of putting faith in people that have trust, that can access, that can view the skills that I had even when I didn't know them myself.
Thanks so much. So we have a couple minutes. I want to ask Devin and Eli. I kind of had questions for you guys, but now after that, I just want you guys to say whatever you want to say. Just because when Herbert went rogue, it was the best. So I don't know what role I really play up here at this point. But the two things that I did have in mind was, you know, and you can answer whatever you want in this couple of minutes we have left. But Devin, you talked a lot about the transition from Palmdale to here, and I just wonder what you feel like you have beneath you now that has allowed you to succeed that you maybe didn't have before. But also answer whatever you want. Ask questions of the group, challenge the group. And Eli, I think the comment I had for you is I just wondered about, you talked about now that you've gotten experience in demystifying this thing called tech, what that means for kind of your family, your community. But again, a couple minutes left. The floor is your guys, but those were my thoughts. You do whatever you want with it, Devin. Make it better.
So what I have now, I guess like before I moved out here, I didn't have like motivation or a drive or insight like to do things. Like if it was an opportunity that came up and I just got lucky, I would just be like, okay. But now it's just like I actually get up every day and This may sound kind of weird, but when I moved out here, I was home. Well, my grandma kicked me out after, staying with her for a month. So I was homeless about like the first 6 months of Europe. And so now I have my own apartment, my own studio, and I look through the blinds every morning and I see um, like kids sleeping in the alley on the floor. And I humble myself every time and I say that that could have still been me, but that was me before. So I have that motivation to get up and not be back on the concrete, not sleeping outside anymore, to get up and do something. Because if I go back to that, or if I would have stayed in Palmdale, I would have still been on my mom's couch. So I have that much motivation to actually get up and actually inspire my friends to do that as well. So that.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess just for me, I've always played like ball at like different gyms around my neighborhood, and so I got connected with a lot of the young kids from there, and a lot of kids would always wonder like why I had money. I was like, oh, it's because I got a job. I was like, that's simple. And so, they would always ask me like, oh, like what do you do? I was like, oh yeah, I run websites and stuff. From my office, and they're just like, really? Like that gets you money? I'm like, yeah, man. And so I guess like being able to just talk to some of them and just really share with them, like, yeah, because I really want to point this out, like the measurement of success in like a lot of neighborhoods in SF is just graduating high school. Like that's it. Like if you can get to high school, you graduate, you're good, you got a high school diploma, but they don't realize like it's really hard to make it, and so you need like that extra education, and so being able to just talk to them, a lot of them are just like, oh, we want to play ball just like you. And I'm like, yeah, but what happens if like things don't work out that way, And so that's when you start pushing education towards them. And I'm like, a lot of you guys like video games, right? So why don't you be the one that creates the video game and then you get paid that way? And so teaching these young kids how to think better, how to basically not really work the system, but how to use the system to their advantage. So that's, yeah.
Thank you. Herbert, you want to close us out, man?
One last thing.
Yeah, please, you end us up.
I mentioned Ray Faustino was the person who helped me become, this sort of realization of my heritage. Ray Faustino is now my boss. I've had this great luxury of going to study at Babson College and having a kind of wide variety of experiences, but coming to the realization that what I needed to do was come back to the Bay Area. There are still so many problems that I see happening in my community, specifically it's Palo Alto, Redwood City. Most of my family still lives here. And when I was given the opportunity to join a Team 1 degree that helps connect low-income families to opportunities like affordable housing, daycare, cash utilities to over 120,000 people every month here in the Bay Area, I was given the excitement of knowing that somebody who loved me, my mentor, was now creating this product that I could become there and for a mentor. And again, replenish again, right, this sense that our community relies on ourselves as we grow up. Something that I want to highlight about my journey has been the continual knowing that at every stage in my life, regardless of age, I've always needed mentors. That's something that I foresee in all of us, that I hope that we can all take away this sort of passion. And if I can challenge you all, seek the positives in each other. If it is something that I can tell you when you see a child walking across, when you see someone, know that that kid could have been me. I think there's something a lot to be said about us sitting up here and realizing that we come from different places, we have similar stories, but we have heart, we have passion, and we want to do positive things. At the end of the day, what's helped me the most is remaining humble, always knowing when to listen, and regardless of when a lot of people are telling me what and where and who I should be doing, I just needed to have the faith that positive people were around me, and at the same time stay humble to know that it's important to listen.
That's some mentoring for all of us. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys. Yeah, you can leave the mic there. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Not really sure what to say now. I had some things written, but none of them seem worthy. But I do think, when you listen to these guys' story and who they are as people, and you think about unrealized potential that happens often just because the connections aren't there, it makes you want to widen pathways and make pathways more well-worn for kids like these guys, so folks are not having to run over barriers to fulfill their potential, so those paths are well-worn. We've got with us on this next panel, and I'm sorry to you guys that you were second, because we definitely put you up against it. That was Theo's suggestion, so you can blame him. But I'm going to ask this next group of leaders. You guys, I think, know who you are, and then I'll introduce you. These are folks who are in the movement, who are leading the movement from a bunch of different vantage points, and we just wanted you to hear from them and hear what they're doing and get their perspective. So come on up, you guys. You can sit in these 4 chairs, I think. We should have a mic for this chair somewhere. Oh, here it is. Here you go. So let me tell you who these folks are, and their bios, I think, are in your agendas. So Theo Miller, first of all, I should say that Theo Miller was foundational and formational in putting tonight together, and with thinking with us about how this is not one event. This is the beginning of something that ripples outward. And he's just been, I've known him for a short time, and he's already been very influential in my thinking about what's going on here and what we can do to advance the mentoring movement. He is the director of Hope SF and the Office of the Mayor and the leader of the local My Brother and Sisters Keeper effort. I'm sure the sisters in the room will be very glad that he added sisters onto the national effort of My Brother's Keeper. Nancy Altabello is the global vice chair of talent at EY. She's also a board member at Mentor, which means she's one of my bosses, so feel free to put in the good word. Gail Hunter is at the end, is the VP of Public Affairs, Community Relations, and Event Management. You need a few more N's there, Gail. For the Golden State Warriors, she does everything but play, and she helped make that spot you saw happen, so she made my whole life. And Laurie Vargas is the district coordinator for Mentoring for Success in San Francisco Unified. I know this might seem strange because you would think that it would be totally intuitive for school districts to run great mentoring efforts. Turns out not so much. School districts are really good at educating young people, and they're also totally overstressed. So adding relationships and mentoring is not always easy. Laurie is the captain of an effort that has done this as well as anybody in the country. So I want to talk a little bit about what she's done. Theo, can we start with you and just get your perspective? I know I don't have to give you these 4 advice about answering whatever question you wish I'd asked. Can you talk a little bit about what you think the city can do to be a catalyst around bringing private nonprofit schools to sort of meet the mentoring needs of kids who need it most? And just whatever you want to call on around bright spots, challenges. How do we align all this, and what role can the public sector play around relationship?
Sure. So thank you, David, Nancy, Meg. First, it's incredible to be here, just to be in this space and to follow these 3 young men. And I think the biggest thing the city needs to do, and I think about Devin's story of the children in the back alley, is really to show up. And so, the work that I do, just a little bit about Hope SF, these are 4 communities in the southeast sector of San Francisco. Alice Griffith, Hunters View, Sunnydale, Potrero Hill. The opportunity we have in San Francisco is, on the one hand, an incredibly daunting challenge, right? We have experienced the most explosive economic growth in the history of the city. We have more cranes up than in the history of San Francisco in terms of construction and development. We have almost 0 unemployment. We're at 3.4%. But yet we have thousands of folks who are not part of the opportunity, part of the prosperity. And so I think, in listening to Herbert and Eli and Devin, I think it just highlights the moment that we're in. And in some ways, seeing the spot with Steph and hearing these amazing young stories, it's very seductive to think that it's about rugged American individualism, right? And that we all got here because of our own gifts and talents and skills. And I think the challenge for the city and county of San Francisco and the wealth that we've experienced in this city over the last 5 years is to be really intentional, to really call out the impact of race, to call out the impact of place, to call out the impact of trauma in this city. And I'll just, quick point here to think about. 10 years ago, there was a study called the 7 Street Corners of San Francisco, and you can Google it. And it looked at 7 corners in this city as having the vast majority of child maltreatment cases, chronic absenteeism, foster care, juvenile justice, involvement with our criminal justice system. And in the city and county of San Francisco, those 7 corners, you can imagine where they are, and 5 of them are in areas that I work in, and 1 in the Tenderloin, and so on and so forth. And so that if we can build the structure, if we can build the framework for all of us to do our part, and I really feel like that's the city's opportunity, to build the apparatus where everyone can plug in, right? Because not everyone can work with someone who's justice involved, but everyone has a lane that they can fill to impact the lives of these amazing young people. So I think that's the challenge for us in the city, is to capture the incredible talent in this room. I mean, I don't get to speak in front of audiences like this about topics like this. We don't get to call out men, boys, young women of color, and the fact that 1 out of every 2 young people in the areas that I live in will barely live to be the age of 26 in this city right now, in 2016, right, where we have all this wealth. And so I think we got to call it out, and we got to create the space where folks can plug in and not create, but help support more Devin, Eli's, and Herberts.
Thank you so much. Nance, one of the things that I always think is interesting when I hear your perspective, I mean, we're going to hear a little bit more about College Map later on, but you head up talent. I think it's something like more than 200,000 people, or so. I don't know how you sleep. Maybe you don't, globally for EY. And yet, when I've heard you talk about mentoring, it's certainly from the heart, but it also sounds a lot like it's a business imperative as well as you think about the people at EY. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how mentoring fits into talent strategy and at the company on a business side.
Yeah, you know me well enough to know I'm rather practical. We don't do things because it's nice. That's not sustainable. A couple things. I'll talk about it at a high level and then at EY. The business imperative to do more mentoring for young people is so strong. You heard some of the facts from Theo. You heard it from our other panel. The amount of children that are living in poverty, the amount of children that are living in communities of violence, the amount of children who struggle to get through high school or who have a plan on what they're going to do afterwards is so significant. And these are people who are disaffected and aren't going to be connected. There's 5.5 million people right now between 16 and 24 who are disconnected and don't know what they're going to do. At the same time, businesses can't fill their needs. There are unfilled jobs, and it's going to get worse. If you look at the statistics, in the next couple of years, 60% of jobs in the U.S. will need secondary education, some sort of secondary education. When our young people are having trouble getting through high school, or when that is the ultimate that they do and don't do anything further, you get what Devin said. Been through high school, now I'm competing with people who are twice my age for very limited jobs, and that is going to get worse. So as a private sector, as a company, you look and say, we could get more people engaged and figure out what they're going to do, and we need that to happen, or we are going to greatly reduce what our economy can be. That's a real business case. Then you look at it and say, well, why us? Well, we're uniquely positioned to do it as businesses. The second thing is it's really good for your business. We measure everything. We're accountants and we are consultants, and we measure everything. And what we have found is our people who do mentoring through our mentoring programs like us more. They like working at EY more. Their survey scores are higher. They stay longer. They're more engaged. They're more proud to work for EY. And there's a direct correlation there. The numbers are too striking. So there is something, and I will tell you, they do better. When they mentor in the community, they come back and they are much better at developing and mentoring other people around them. But the third thing that I think is really important is if you're going to do it, you better do it right. Because if you have a mentoring program that isn't well run, you could do more damage than not. It needs to be something that's designed to work, to use the strengths that you have in your organization, that you partner with an organization that's good and can work with you well, and that you follow some basic things. Mentor has great information. We worked with Mentor a couple years ago, as David said, and put out a Crossroads book that's all in your seats, but that has some of the elements of what is good mentoring. But if you're going to do it right. So that's what I would say about why.
Thanks so much, Just to keep people guessing, I'm going to skip Laurie and go to Gail and then come back to Laurie. I don't want to be predictable. Gail, so, I mean, you've got this incredibly huge platform, right, as a sports team, and no lack of suitors for their causes and for engagement. You can only go so deep. I just wondered how you view kind of the Warriors' responsibility and how best to use it to advance, and sort of at what level, you know, because there's only so much you can do. So I just wondered your view.
It's very complicated, and yet it's not. I would say that, like, as I listen, it's funny you say that, because as I listen to my fellow panelists, I'm like, wow, they sound really smart. You know? And we look at what we do, we play basketball. And I think if you look at that Steph spot, and I think that's my day job. And we were talking before that, you know, part of my work last year was coordinating the team going to the White House. So when this opportunity came up, I'm like, what? And we were laughing because there was an interaction both from FLOTUS and POTUS. Both wanted some access to our team, which, as we were having that conversation, it was mind-blowing that, wow, we have an opportunity here to stand out. Our players love that opportunity, the ability to show where they care, and I think to show, when we talk about mentors, and we've done PSAs, et cetera, to showcase the importance that mentors have played in our players' lives, who all have their own stories. We look upon ourselves sometimes as we're storytellers. We're in the entertainment business. The stories our people, our talent have to tell are real stories. And the work that our organization does, I love the fact that you said it's all about business. It's for us, it's good business for our players and their brands. It's good business for our employees and what we believe in. And it's good business because we believe we're a part of the community. We're a part of the community where we live and go to work every day, and it's really important. But, you know, some of the avenues sometimes, and the ability that we have, and the fact that we're playing every day, the fact that, you know, we can say we're 2015 NBA champions, it's an amazing sort of mantle to have that you can't take it for granted. And I think we have had, the last few years, the right group of players, employees, and an organization that has really taken advantage of that.
That's awesome. Thank you. You should see, if you haven't, go on their website. There's a range of My Brother's Keeper spots that were unbelievable that the team made. Lori, so it's funny because I'm about to ask you a question. I've got Hetty Chang from Attendance Awareness right in my line of sight, one of the leading experts in the country on getting kids to school and figure out why they're not. And it leads right really into my question, which is, you know, schools a lot of times view primary responsibility educating the kids that make it to school. That's fair, right? But, you know, they don't necessarily think about what happens if they don't get there, about the other relationships in their lives. One of the things I've talked to a lot of road-weary educators about is, you all want us to identify problems, but that also means you want us to solve them. There's no one else coming in to solve them. So you keep asking us to find out about kids' problems, but then you also want us to solve them. And that's a tough mantle. What made San Francisco Unified make the leap, just getting systemic about relationships for kids so they could show up and achieve? And just tell us how you're going about that with Mentoring for Success. Because, again, for those of you in the room, it's really unique. It may not seem that way, but it's really unique for a district to have this expansive of a mentoring effort.
Thank you for having us here. We do think it is unique. A lot of times when we talk about mentoring programs, you think about from the community perspective, folks going out and maybe playing basketball with them out at the corner park. But about 9 years ago, we started a mentoring program, school-based, as a pilot. Let's see how it goes. Where are kids most of the time? We know that they're at school, or hopefully they should be at school, and so why not try and mentor them in a natural environment? It was a pilot program at 9 elementary schools and 1 middle school here in San Francisco, and today we are at 50 schools, K through 12, across San Francisco, mentoring approximately 700 students a year. It didn't happen overnight. We have grown immensely. There are 4 of us at the district level who are supporting our programs. And it was honestly the federal government who really allowed us to move forward with various grants from the Department of Education, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. That's always a mouthful to say. And now San Francisco Unified has decided that this is a priority. It is a priority for us to look at students from a holistic perspective. I'm fortunate that the program that we are housed within a department called, here's another mouthful here, Students and Families Community Department, and really focusing on it's not just about the academics. Students cannot thrive and survive in schools unless they are feeling supported. They need more caring adults. And we know they have caring adults at home. So it's not to say that parents and guardians and loved ones are not caring for them. It's that they need more opportunities. And Mentoring for Success, you know, we've really been able to show that it really is that holistic approach that's going to help students and young people make it through school.
Thanks, Laurie. Theo, you know, I know you've been intimately engaged in the My Brother's Keeper effort, and sort of what's been fascinating to me about the My Brother's Keeper effort, I get asked pretty much on a daily basis, what is it? Because one of the things that's happened with My Brother's Keeper that I think people don't realize, they thought it was going to be some sort of federal program, is that the president just called people to a conversation and to an issue and then kind of said, you take it, because it means something very different in San Francisco than it does in Boston, than it does in Miami. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what it means in San Francisco, but then I am going to lead the witness a little bit and say, I wonder if you could also talk about why mentoring fits so much in the center of it as well. So if you could just talk about that here.
Sure. So I'll first say that, you know, to your point, David, when the president announced this, I think now almost, 2.5 years ago, those of us in city government, there was even a conversation as to whether or not we would sign on for the My Brother's Keeper effort, because for those of us who deal with the federal government, you often know that it's like sizzle without the steak on some level, right? And so it comes with a host of challenges without any resources. And what I'll say, and I remember the conversation in the mayor's office, and there was sort of a debate in this city, and it sort of goes back to my first point about how uncomfortable it is sometimes to confront the reality that we see. And I know we're dealing with the homeless crisis here and deal with the visible effects of inequality, right? And so on some level, the president gave us an opportunity to have this uncomfortable conversation and to basically to own it. And the mayor was unapologetic about saying, absolutely, yes, we have the highest performing urban school district in the state. Yes, we have houses that are $1 million, we have 3% unemployment, but we know we also have one of the most insidious achievement gaps in the history of this country. We know the decline of the African-American population in San Francisco. We know these things. And so on some level, the president gave us a framework to say, we can do better.
Yeah.
And we need to do better. And for us in San Francisco, because we looked at the data and we know that our young women experience gender-specific challenges as well, the mayor was clear that this needed to be men and boys and girls of color. And he was absolute about that. And so for us, the MBSK work has really been an apparatus to bring folks together, to combine our resources, to go get more resources, to engage in a sort of evidence-based approach to trying to do better by certain populations where it's about race, place, and trauma in this city, where our Samoan community, our African American community, our Latino community experiences outcomes that other folks don't. And so I would say in terms of the mentor piece, sometimes when I get in these conversations and I do the data and I talk about, the fact that yes, San Francisco is not Ferguson, but San Francisco has officer-involved shootings. San Francisco has persistent inequality. We know at the same time that San Francisco has an incredible opportunity. We have 5,000 African Americans remaining in the school district. So on some level, we have an opportunity to get our mind around resourcing folks that have been left behind. And that's where I get to the mentor moment, because the mentorship, if done the right way, if done in a way that's intentional and that's targeted and that's not, as I call, mentorship light, right? That's durable, that's responsible. We really feel like you can turn the curve on a lot of these outcomes. You can have a catalytic effect on young people's lives.
Thanks so much, Theo. Gail, I sort of want to ask a similar question, but I also, because we're starting to get towards the back half, I also want to invite you guys to respond to the young people, talk about opportunities, say whatever you want, basically. But I wonder about, we heard right away from the NBA that My Brother's Keeper was incredibly resonant, and that they had rarely had players so interested in something they wanted to get involved in. You're with guys every day, you're thinking about the team and what it gets engaged in. I just wondered about, like, if there's anything you want to share about the resonance that you felt of My Brother's Keeper and the mentoring amongst the team, amongst the guys, amongst the league.
I'm going to set up the next speaker who I know is going to talk a little bit about this, but I think the nature of the game, the nature of who we have as players and where they came from, and this topic, and just, like a light in the eye, a mentor. Well, I had so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and I had this person guiding me in college, and I had this person when I was a kid, and then, there was my mother, and there was this. So it was something that was a very heartfelt topic, and, well, what can I do to help? And, oh, I can do that. I might not be able to be a mentor that can contribute, so many hours a week, but this means something to me. And I think there are not a whole host of, community things out there, I'll call them things, that we're always asking our players to do that resonated like this. So it was a very natural that didn't, we don't have a lot of stats and data. It was very heartfelt that I want to be a part of this. This makes sense for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Gail. Nancy, so again, I know we're going to get into college maps, so I don't want to steal the thunder too much, but I wanted to understand a little bit more, how you would make the case, to other companies that this is something worth investing in. And what I've also heard you talk about, which I always think is interesting, is so people at EY talk about their mentors in the company. Like it's a core value that you said can't just exist in the bubble of our company. It's got to exist in the community. So just anything you want to share, and also just opportunities you think that are out there.
Yeah, I'll talk real quick about College Map and how it matches who we are. So about 7 years ago, 2009, we were looking for a program that we could build and that worked on our skills and met what our people wanted to do. We work in teams every day. We all of our issues are solved on teams. So we decided some kind of team mentoring really made sense. So we started in a couple cities. We're now in 31. But the idea was, let's find a school with very high need, and let's go in with a team of mentors, people who would sign up. They could have any amount of seniority with us, but they had to agree to meet monthly, and they had to agree for a 2-year commitment. The teams go out, meet with juniors and seniors in high school, again, team, so it's team with team, and just spend time helping them to understand what's this college thing all about, what our college is, how do you pick a major, how do you go and apply, how do you get financial aid, and then how do you stay in school, the persistence piece of it. And the teaming has been beautiful because the student teams get to hear perspectives from a whole bunch of different mentors, which is actually really helpful. The students end up forming their own little network and team, and then we stick with them for the couple years. There's a poster over there on the results. We're really proud of it. We've had 900 mentors. We've had over 1,100 students go through this, and 99% of them have graduated from high school, and these are in schools that don't have anywhere near that kind of percentages. 90% have gone to college, and 5% have gone to other forms of post-high school training. We're really proud of that. Our next step is make sure those 90% stay in college, and that's a real thing for us. So you're going to get to hear from them, from some mentors and mentees. That'll be much more powerful than what I can say, but it's been such a wonderful thing for us, and every year we know it's good because more cities come and say, we want that, and want to add on to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. So Laurie, I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I'm going to go to Q&A, so start thinking of your questions. And I have more, so you need to ask. Laura, so I'm going to just tee you up here. So room full of people. I think the traditional public schools probably more and more feel like, gosh, I feel like I should be doing something, but I don't know what. So I'm going to go to the charter school down the street or something that feels a little bit more accessible than the big, hairy traditional school district. What can I do? What can I do to scrub in, and actually be helpful rather than be a distraction in terms of bolstering kids in the public schools? What would you say to private sector companies and other folks?
Well, everyone should become a teacher. No, just kidding. Become a mentor. I mean, I think, I want to kind of go back a little bit and think about what are some of the outcomes, right? So any program, when you're looking at the success, you have to look at what are the outcomes that you have. Originally, when we started our program in the school district, our outcome was not academics. Our outcome was to look at how do we provide caring adults at the school site? How do we keep our young people engaged in school? And then we started, everyone's like, oh, research. It has to be an evidence-based program. Okay, fine, we'll look at the research. What does the data say? I'm not a data guru. My friend back there, Vita, she's our data guru person. So really helps us look at what the students are telling us. We were one of the first programs within the school district outside of the academic realm to look at the outcomes of young people that have been matched with a mentor. 42% of the students that are matched with a mentor increase their GPA. 42%. It might seem like, well, it's not 50%, it's not 75%, but 42%, that is a lot. 37% of those students are showing up to school. 37% of 700 students. Somebody do the math. I'm a therapist by trade, not a mathematician. Somebody, iPhone, 250. There we go. Oh, yeah. I got EY right here.
Really complementary strengths on this panel.
250 students then started showing up to school more because they felt engaged. They knew somebody cared about them. Yes, most of our mentors are school district staff. However, they can't do it all. They're already strapped thin. They're on other committees. They're running the sports teams. They're running journalism clubs, things like that. And so we turn then to the private sector and we say, what can you do to help? The way I look at it, when I'm out there and I'm talking to mentors and I'm training them, it's not about just one student. To me, every student in San Francisco is my student. I used to work at an elementary school, and all of the kids there were my students. When I leave and I'm out in the community and I'm talking to kids, I let them know, you're my kid. I don't know who you are. What school do you go to? Oh, hey, I know somebody who works there. And I let them know that it really does matter to us as adults in San Francisco to see them succeed. And we've had a lot of great success with connecting with private sector, with companies who allow their employees to go and mentor in groups. I saw a couple of the names actually on the list. I won't say who they are. I don't know if they're allowed to put their name out there. But they go together. So 3 or 4 of them, they leave the office at the same time. They show up to the school Tuesday afternoon, maybe during lunchtime or right after school gets out, and they hang out with the kids. So for those employees, what we've heard is that it really builds up their camaraderie. They now have a sense of community. It's no longer just this business model that they're working for. It is we, as this business, are doing this to give back to the community that we live in and that we work in. And so both of you had talked about it being really a business model. And having employees come together really does solidify that sense of companionship and collegiality amongst each other. And they're all different roles within the company, and I think it's great for them to kind of come together. And so we know that there are private sectors that they're not able to get to a school site from that 9 to 5, they're not able to get out of school. get out to get into the schools during lunchtime or after school. And so, I just want to acknowledge that Mentoring for Success, we are not the only mentoring program in San Francisco. There are over 30 active and mentoring agencies or organizations in San Francisco to where you can do community-based mentoring or mentoring at the school site. And so just to really think about that it's our community, right? It's not that I live here or I work here. It is a place that you want to be, and it really allowing a young person to see how fruitful San Francisco really is.
Thanks so much, Laurie. So I want to just encourage folks, in addition to the swell bottles and dessert, I talked about Hetty. There's also Susan Portugal here who leads the global volunteer efforts at Bank of America, just to say that there are unbelievable leaders in your midst. So I hope people are able to stay around and talk about these efforts to move the needle. I think we have 5 minutes maybe or so, or maybe a little bit more, for Q&A. Go ahead. Yeah, I love that. And there's mics here, or you can use a loud voice, whatever you like. Okay, good.
Hi, everyone. My name is Biawe. I direct the African American Theme Program at UC Berkeley, and I also on the founding team of HBC, the startup. But I don't remember names. So, Theo, first of all, I want to thank you very much for talking about race in the Bay Area, because I think there's this illusion that because it's progressive, it's the Bay Area, there's no issues around race. So I appreciate you for saying that. Lori, I wanted to ask you, Lori and Gail, I have questions for both of you. Lori, my question to you is, when you're talking to potential mentors, how are you ensuring that you're not perpetuating a single story on behalf of the students that you represent? And what I mean by that is that, I too grew up in a low-income family, first generation born in the United States, and I grew up in the Boys and Girls Club, and there was this constant story of struggle, right? But there was never any story around celebration of success. For me, that can be damaging when you only see yourself as this poor kid, right? You come from rich histories and things like that. So how, in your facilitation of mentorship with folks, how you're ensuring that you're not perpetuating that? And Gail, my question to you is also, I think when I think about the NBA, I think that's a great thing and all that good stuff, but I also think the likelihood of a young black or brown kid making it to the NBA is very slim. And so how, again, making sure that we're opening possibilities beyond.
Wow.
So that was a statement and not a question.
Yeah. I was throwing softballs. Good luck.
So I'll take the eyes off of you then and answer about what we do. It's funny that you asked that. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
B, right? B.
B. A lot of times when I'm talking to a potential mentor, I actually don't even tell them why this young person has been recommended to the mentoring program. It's, to me, it's a natural inclination to want to provide a caring adult to a young person. And then people ask me, well, why are the kids recommended? How are they chosen? And I take a step back. I'm like, oh yeah, sometimes people want to know this. Yes, they are chosen because maybe they're academics or because they're struggling attendance-wise, but sometimes they're chosen because they're shy and they're quiet. And I often do talk about those kinds of stories because they're very impactful. The idea that we can make a change in someone's academics, that is like, whoa, way over there. That's like pie in the sky, whatever that saying is. That idea, though, it's really outrageous. But to say, hey, you can make a caring relationship with a young person, you can be their friend and open up their eyes, that makes it a lot easier to think about that we can engage. And I love the Steph Curry video because they play Connect 4. That is what we do. We play Connect 4. There's a lot that can happen when you're engaging and playing games. And so to kind of go back to, a positive note, I will sometimes talk about this young person. She was matched at the beginning of 6th grade, academically performing very well, actually. She was quiet. She didn't have a voice. She didn't have friends. We matched her with a librarian at the school who's very quirky and kooky and, actually a lot of fun. And the two of them were such an ideal match that this young girl, by the time she was in 8th grade, she was still matched with this mentor. She started engaging with other students who looked nothing like her. And that would not have happened in the 6th grade if she didn't have opportunities to go out and be a part of the community and to see herself as part of the community. So for us, it brings us a lot of joy when we can say that a young person feels as if they are a part of the community.
Gail, did you want to weigh in, or you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I thought you might. Thanks, Lori.
I love your question/statement. And it's funny you say that, because I would say I want the foundation team and CR team, social responsibility from the Warriors. There's 4 of them here. If you ask them all that question, they would all say, we never talk about basketball. We never talk about basketball. We spend the majority of our time in the education field through reading programs, and when Adonal comes up here, he'll address that. We talk about fitness, we talk about eating healthy, and all about becoming citizens in the community and what that means and how you're going to get ahead. So in the majority of talking points when our players go out, talk to what a great honor and how rare it is that I am in this position, and the numbers of people who don't make it. And this is why you need to go to school, and this is why this is important. So it was interesting you said that. I'm like, well, we never talk about that. Our basketball clinics are tied to practice and, thinking about repetition, et cetera, and how important this is in school and in your life. So it's central to everything we do, that the basketball piece is the message point to get to all of the rest of the things that are so important.
Thanks so much, Gail. Looks like we've got another, yeah.
For Nancy, I love this concept of measurement. I think that's the beautiful fundamental part. So my name is Vince. I'm a mentor at Berkeley, Google, MIT, and also Stanford. So the question for you is, consider as a successful mentorship is you tie in people for 2 years and for every 30 days. Excellent monologue. We are changing. This whole tech scene is changing. What are the principles are you thinking to be a successful mentor? And otherwise, what do you think about reverse mentoring? At Howard really said that is also a concept of reverse mentoring. It's not only it's a two-way street. So those are my 2 questions.
Yeah. I love the concept of reverse mentoring, and we use it very much internally at EY. The idea that people learn from each other, especially around differences when people are different. So we do a lot of that. We encourage a lot of that. I mentioned before how the people who go and mentor come back and do better inside. So much of that is through reverse mentoring, learning to listen differently, learning to be more flexible, mentoring on teams. There's so much of that happens, and you're going to hear from some of our mentors, but what they say is, I learned more than I'm pretty sure I imparted. So that's very much a part of it. The measurements, we have some that we follow. We look at graduation rates, we look at college rates, we look at staying in college rates, and we look at our people's satisfaction. Do they stay with it? They make a 2-year commitment, but do they stay with it? And that we're off the charts. I swear it keeps people in our business because they are committed to this program, where otherwise they might go somewhere else. They stay. So we look at retention of the people, and we look at how engaged they are and how they answer our employee surveys. We're able to go in and slice it that way. So those are our basic metrics. But as a mentor board member, I care about many, many more metrics. And one of the things that Mentor's done a beautiful job of is really identify what metrics we should be looking at and what success will be. And I know we're not there yet, and I'm incredibly goal-oriented, so we've got to get everybody with a mentor. David and I both were on the board. David ran the Massachusetts Mentoring Partnership, and I was on the board there, and we were chasing coverage of mentors, and we actually got over 50% before you moved to national. So those are the kind of metrics that I think are really important.
Thanks, Nance. So I think we may already be the 3 people standing, or probably we have like 5 minutes and 3 questions, so we'll see how we do. But Dusty-Ann, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dusty-Ann North, and I'm actually here representing the Cal And we've actually, in different phases, had a partnership for almost 20 years. But we've reemerged in the last couple of years, and we're very connected to the services field. We work with some of the folks up there in the panel, and we're very connected to government resources. And so, we just want to offer our support to everyone in this room if anybody's interested in starting something new or looking at how to do things. We do a lot of technical assistance and training, which we can offer at no cost. And we do a lot of research and support do corporations need from the state mentoring movement to get more corporate involvement in mentoring and get more folks on board, because that's an area we'd like to move on.
Really simple expertise. You guys know what makes good mentoring programs, and bringing that, really two things. Bringing that information, there's such great stuff on the Mentor website, so bringing that. The second thing is helping to find a partner. We partner with College for Every Student, and there's so many good partners around, so helping to make that match is really important.
Yeah, and at the end, actually, I'm going to have the folks from the California Mentoring Partnership raise their hands. So thanks for setting that up, Dustin. Why don't we go to this side and then we'll go to Corbin? You guys are way too polite and we're going to run out of time. So Corbin, go ahead, man. I'm going to call you out and then we'll go there. Yeah.
Who said sugary dead, right? So I'm also representative of the California Mentoring Partnership, the newest member. My question is, I think a lot of the conversation we are having around mentoring is geared towards software you need to use for project management and X, Y, and Z.
Gail, do you want to take that or no? Okay. We can keep picking on Nancy. I was just, yeah, or Theo. Yeah. Theo, do you want to respond a little bit?
I mean, as the mayor's office speaking to corporate mentorship, I don't know that I'm the appropriate person to speak on that. But I will say that we do believe in the peer model. So to speak to your point, and one of the to be honest, one of the questions for me in coming to this conversation, because there's a lot of debate in the tech field, business field, of how do you diversify the workforce, right? And how do you mentor folks who maybe look like yourself to move up and succeed in this space? And I think that's a really important conversation to have side by side, thinking about the younger Devons and the folks in Double Rock that I deal with. So I think it's a very, very, very good question.
And I will just masquerade as a corporate tycoon for a minute, which I'm definitely not. But I would say two ways that does happen is calling people to volunteer leadership as board members of nonprofits and of mentoring organizations. And also, I think one of the things at least we counsel and all of our state affiliates counsel private sector folks when they get into mentoring is, what does your company uniquely have to offer in a mentoring relationship with a young person or with mentoring organizations? What are you the best in the world at? And how can that strengthen the mentoring movement, not just by mentoring a young person, but in the infrastructure of the mentoring movement? So I think that's something we more and more, one of the things we do in mentoring is we limit the only call to action to being volunteering to mentor with a young person. But there's a lot of other ways to strengthen the movement. So we have to keep sounding that call as well. But thanks, Corbin, for the great question.
And I'm really not afraid of your question.
Last question.
Hello.
You got it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan Herrera. I'm an ambassador for Network for Teach
Unleashing Entrepreneurship, aka Nifty. So you can check us out right there if you guys would like. So I am a high school student. I'm a senior over at Richmond. So my question for you guys is, well, first let me give you some pre-concept. I have a mentor. Thankfully, I'm very thankful that I have a mentor. He was matched. So my question is, how do you develop or an organic relationship with the mentor? How do you seek, like at an event here, how would I seek a mentor among all of these wonderful people?
Great question. You stand up and say that in front of 200 people, and then it just happens like magic if you have that kind of courage. Laura, you want to head that one up?
I'll take a stab at that one. I mean, number one, yes, putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. The great thing about social media now is that we can put those messages out there that I want to learn about, how to code. I want to learn how to quilt. You can put that out there to somebody and learn from someone who has the expertise. I think sometimes when folks have been in their job or in their position for a while, they forget that they can get out there and find someone else that they can share that expertise with. And, you briefly mentioned getting involved in board, and I think thinking about nonprofits and boards is a great way to do some of the professional mentoring. So I am also on a board of a tiny nonprofit, but I did it more so in the idea that I wanted to mentor new folks that are coming into the field of education and really think about that. I just want to acknowledge that for a lot of young people of color, including young adults, we don't often have that opportunity to find mentors in the professional realm. And so just thinking about what that means. And in the school district, and this is aside from mentoring even, by itself, we also have a group of folks in my office who identify as persons of color, and we talk about how do we mentor each other? How do we come together within this group? And knowing that for young people and young adults of color, you have to be intentional. You have to go out and talk to them and get to know people. And for us, sometimes it's intimidating to be in a business world that is still very much sorry to say this, very much a white male dominated world. It is still hard and intimidating to go out there. And so think about the people that you work with. Think about when new staff come in, how can you welcome them into the environment and help build a community for them to let them know that they're not alone in it?
Anybody else want to handle the mentor magnet question with any other advice?
I would say someone once told me everybody likes talking about themselves. So what seems like a cold call or a question of how'd you get where you are? That's an easy question for anyone to answer. You don't have to do any research. It's your story. So as you approach it as I want to learn as many stories as I can, you're going to hear more stories. And then, on the job search side, then someone once told me, and when you talk to someone, ask them, would you be comfortable giving me 3 other people I should talk to? And I found that an incredible sort of before the word network was cool, networking opportunity. I just want to meet people. And people respond to that because that's a genuine, I want to meet people. I want to meet people who can help me. And I think there's more people like us who just want to help people that don't make it all official, and it will evolve in its own sort of natural way that will feel comfortable for you and comfortable for the person you're talking to.
And I would also say, and I think you already know this, that there's no room and no stage on which you do not belong. And you take that with you. And in this city, as it's changing, the way in which it's changing, I tell every young person, this is your city. And just, you remember that. And I think you already have that, but just remember that point.
That, yeah. Theo, you did a heck of a job wrapping us up. Thank you. You were so good, people just clapped and said. So Gail has a special introduction for one more guest, and then we'll move to the last part of our program. So go ahead, Gail.
It's my pleasure and an honor for me to introduce our next speaker, a gentleman who has played in the NBA for 13 years, his first 10 with the Golden State Warriors. But in my mind and heart, way more important than that, he presents a heart and soul of our organization and has a remarkable story that you all need to hear. It's my pleasure to introduce Adonal Foyle, who serves as our community ambassador.
Thank you so much, Gail, for that amazing introduction. I grew up on an island of about 500 people. So my journey to the United States was a little bit different. I met two college professors, and they offered me this amazing opportunity to come to the United States. I did not know that they live upstate New York at the time and that there was a lot of blizzards and snow. So you can imagine, after the first blizzard, I called my mom and said, I think they're trying to kill me. And my parents, my step-parents, they were amazing, I think in part because they understand culturally where I was coming from. And one of the things I tried to do, which I still believe is child abuse, I was playing basketball in New York City, and they took me to watch Cheetah Rivera in Kiss of the Spider Woman. I don't know if anybody have ever watched that. It's about revolution, death, and mayhem. And then they sent me to play a basketball game. So that was my first introduction about the importance of people in your life that is constantly stretching that barriers between academic and sports. And I've always believed that that's one of the things that always drive me. A question was asked earlier about why this is such a natural fit for NBA players, because I think many of us, where we've come from, we all come from very various backgrounds, but the thing that is true is that many of us have someone that help us. That's true for all of us. And for me, it was no different. My high school teacher, when I came here, I struggled with the language quite a bit. And she would do these things where she would give me extra papers to write. I thought it was punishment. Didn't see it as a good thing until much later, and I still wouldn't tell her that. But she gave me all this extra work to do. And I got all the way to college, and I wrote my first book, and I sent her the transcript many years later. And when I got it back, it was all red ink. I was so proud of that first work, so I sent it, and oh, finally I'm gonna get an A, and just red ink everywhere. She's like, it's a really good start. So back to the drawing board. And Peter Balakian was one of my professors at Colgate. He taught me about poetry. And at the time, it was the easiest way for me to express myself. And it has stuck with me throughout my career. When I retired, I had the opportunity to write about my retirement and retiring from the league with a poem. In basketball, I had Clifford Ray. When Clifford came to the team in 2000, I believed that basketball was easy. I didn't think anything about stretching, so I couldn't touch my toes. And Clifford was like, you just can't go onto the floor and just think you're going to play against the best players in the world. I'm like, why not? It worked, right? And he taught me how to stretch. Literally, I could not get down. And but 2 years into my career, I'm like putting my legs on top of his shoulder, and he's 7'2". So it was really awesome. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to do that. I even tried a yoga class, thanks to Clifford, because he told me I should try yoga. And he still calls me and still asks me if I'm stretching. Mentorship is one of those things that it's not just at one point in your life. It's one of those things that happens and evolve over time. One of the people that sometimes you have mentors that you don't really know that they're your mentor. When I retired, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I started to do some TV, and I sat next to this man that has been a legend in the Bay and a legend, for the Warriors organization. That's Nate Thurman. I got to watch the game with him at ABC7, and I was telling him, I was like, man, I'm really nervous. I've never done this before. You've been doing this for a long time, and he says, Adonal, didn't you play basketball for 13 years? And we started talking and sharing and watching the game through each other's eyes. And the most amazing thing, Nate passed away about a month and a half ago. And those moments, you understand how those small moments you have with people, what a profound effect they have on the rest of your life. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote for Nate. Warrior of the Bay. How can I measure the heart of a man when a man sees his contribution as simply doing his part? Many traverse the hardwood flow, but few bend it to the will, sharp to the very end. Greatness is not about speaking of greatness, but allowing your adversaries to boast of your ferocity and your elegance. When the ball was laid to rest, you taught us how to make the world your playground. Unafraid to journey into the unknown, donning an apron and cooking the famous ribs that we still talk about. Becoming a man who tell tales of hoop heaven to a new generation of Dub Nation faithful. Why must he go, I ask? He's the best of us. Who will show us the path of greatness paved with such humility? He was a tower with the heart of an angel. In the midst of great charter, he walked with dignity, allowing history to become its own, to make its own conclusion. Our friend has gone to sleep, but the quilt of excellence that hangs in our collective memory will forever be the template of his immortality. I've learned many great lessons from this gentle giant, but none more profound than in the midst of the chaos, hold firm to your optimism and infect the skeptics with hope. Our dear friend has gone to rest. But how many like him can say, I was here and I left an indelible mark on every soul I encountered on this road called life? Fear not, warrior of the bay. You will have dinner with the angels tonight, but know that the lessons is learned. For I have your eternal optimism held close to my heart. Sleep well until we meet again, warrior of the bay. We can't always tell the impact that we have in someone's life. It's one of those things, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's subtle. I guess my message for everybody in this room is that it's one of the greatest gifts that you can give, is the gift of knowledge. We can have tremendous amount of theoretical knowledge, but when you have walked the path, that path that is laid behind you is a path that every person is made a little bit different by experiencing it. You know where the road bumps are. You know to tell them when to duck, when to roll, because you have walked that path. That's the most powerful gift we all have, is a gift of knowledge. And being able to infect somebody else with that knowledge and giving them the path to see greatness and to experience greatness. In many of our lives, we don't have that truth. Just by pulling back the curtain and says, it's not as scary as you think, right? You too can walk my path. I can show you what I know. And during the course of our life, we're going to have many, many, many mentors. And for me, the greatest gift now is going back and speaking to the next generation and showing them my path. And I hope you all will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. You didn't know you were going to a poetry reading. I didn't know I was going to a poetry reading. We're going to wrap up with, I promise you, stick around for a little bit longer, and we're going to wrap up with a really powerful example of, this work and show you what it looks like when a company starts a mentoring initiative that is really connected to its core values. So I'm going to ask Ernie, Allison, Yesenia, and Hugo to please come up. You also get the benefit of not seeing me for at least 10 to 15 minutes, and to share with us a little bit about college. Matt and then we'll close it down. And thank you guys so much for hanging in with us.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm often taught in my firm that sometimes you've got some big shoes to follow, but I think this sets an all-time standard coming behind Adonal Foyle. So I'll try to live up to about half of his shoe size in the time that we have here. Earlier, so my name is Ernie Cortez, and I'm an assurance partner with Ernst & Young. I've been with the firm nearly 30 years now. And in 2009, I was approached as the firm was developing a mentoring program called College Map to be part of one of the pilot programs. And that pilot program took place originally in Palo Alto. At the time I was approached, I enthusiastically said yes. And that's because I was the first in my family, and for the longest time, the only one in my family, to attend a four-year university. So it hit to my heart and soul. But not only mine. If you go around the firm as a whole, almost a third of the people that we employ at EY are first generation to graduate from college. So when approached, I enthusiastically said yes, and then started to learn what it actually meant. Group mentoring. I was very familiar with individual mentoring. Most of us in the room do it, or have done it, or had it done to us. But how is this group mentoring thing going to work in a professional services firm, right? So we ventured out to find a school which had a person or people that were enthusiastically looking for a program like this that would support it, and we found one. Then we went out looking for a group of mentors, people that wanted to give back. No problem filling that group of people. And truthfully, it's one of the things that makes people proud is the fact that the firm sponsors such a program. And then we got the criteria to go out and attempt to do a group mentoring program for the first year with a program that hadn't actually been done, which meant that we had to build a lot of trust at a school and with a group of students. So the 12 mentors run off to the school to start group mentoring and truthfully learned a ton in the process from each other. So let me tell you the pros and cons of group mentoring. You know, as an individual mentor, you can schedule a meeting, you can cancel a meeting and reschedule a meeting with your mentees. The College Map program was meant to get students into college. That was the initial goal. It's expanded now to get them through college. But to get them into college, we had curriculum that was going to get them through the process of applying, the process of getting accepted, which meant we had to be regimented in what we did. So there was no timeouts available. There was no cancel a meeting with your mentee and we'll pick up that college application a month after the due date. It required discipline. And so our mentors had to be committed to the process. But more importantly, for those of you in corporations, especially those of you that have people that travel or have assignments, group mentoring gave us flexibility because I didn't have a one-on-one relationship with people. I had a 12-on-18 type of relationship, a 1 to 1.5, which meant there were times where I didn't need to be there, but there would be other mentors there to pick up and run with you to keep you heading in the right direction. So that's the real advantage that we got from group mentoring, the flexibility that you got, that you didn't have to show up every time because you had a group of others that was going to pick it up and run with you. So we started on our way with our very first class and have now been at it for 7 years. We've graduated 3 classes into college and are halfway through our 4th. And we made some mistakes along the way. Nancy pointed out earlier that, you know, we opened this up from a mentorship standpoint to people at every level in the organization. Well, in year 1, we wanted the program to be successful. So we took the traditional model. We took some senior people in the organization, people that have been with the firm 5 years or longer, because we knew they were stable, we knew they'd do a great job. And they did a great job. Problem was, the students didn't connect to all of those people. So in year 2, we made the decision to open it up and to have people at every level in the organization be able to volunteer to be a mentor. It is a decision we have never looked back on. It has been key to building relationships and building good, strong mentor relationships. So with me today, I have 3 folks who've been connected to the program in various ways. First, should I go in order here? I'll start at the far end. First, we have Allison Brown. She's the EY College Map Access Director and an Associate Director at EY. Next to her, Hugo Horta, who's a College Map collegian. He was a recent graduate from one of our high school programs. And then we have Yesenia Morales. And Yesenia was part of our first program, so she got to see the experiment in action. So let me shut up for a minute, and maybe we'll start with you, Allison. And Allison, maybe you can tell the group how you got connected to the College Map program.
Sure. Thanks, Arnie. So I was one of the people in 2010. I tried to apply in 2009, was told not experienced enough. I had only been at EY 3 years at that point. And so I was able to join as a mentor in 2010. And I really got connected because my counselor at EY, which is my official kind of internal mentor, was involved in the program, was telling me how great it was. And I thought, this sounds like a fantastic opportunity. And one of the things that was so appealing about the group mentoring is, you know, we hear these stories about how inspiring it is to have someone as your mentor, but on the mentor side, that's such huge responsibility. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess this person's chances up. What if I don't tell them the right answer? What should I do? You know, it's very scary. So having it as a group program, knowing, well, if I don't have the answer, maybe someone else does, or we can talk about it. Let's have a discussion. And having that format was really, really helpful.
So now let's fast forward. You've been part of the program now 6 years. So how has this impacted your career at EY?
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. It's really interesting to look back on. So for me, I started as a mentor and then became a program director, an access director with the program. And a lot of what I was able to do was, one, as people have talked about, is really expanding your network. So getting a chance to meet people that I wouldn't have necessarily met or had contact with. We're a huge firm, even just within the Bay Area. There are people that I would never run into otherwise. So having that networking was fantastic. And the other thing that I got to do was, as we were having the opportunity to do some of these presentations and teaching, was really to develop my skills in that area. And that was something that I was interested in. I then parlayed into teaching some of our assurance trainings, and that eventually led me into my role now, where I handle all the learning for our West Assurance people within EY.
That's about as a direct correlation as you can get as far as that's concerned. You've gone through our program. So what's College Map? You know, how's it impacted your life?
Well, I can say that first of all, it was really thanks to this program that I was able to really get that full college experience. You know, move to a different city, live on campus. You know, you get really good experiences. It wasn't easy though. It's a really difficult process, especially when you're the first generation going to college. So, I mean, it's when you hear like, oh, you can go to college, it's probably like as scary as when they told me I had to sit over here with a microphone in my hand. And, you know, that's when the whole college map program came in. You know, they brought mentors where, you know, you can actually relate to them because they already went through the process, you know. And they help you with those questions, you know, like where you want to go, why you want to go there, all the way to how are you going to get there, or like what are we going to do to get you there, you know. And like all these questions I wouldn't even ask them like 4 or 5 years ago, you know. 4 or 5 years ago I was in Mexico, asking myself, what am I going to do after middle school, you know. And then just come to a different country and then learn the language, try to like catch up, and then, you know, be in one of these programs where they tell you, oh, you can go to college, you know. And I think that it was mainly like how much exposure they gave me, you know, little things just like visiting like all these beautiful campuses, you know. Sometimes even having just a panel of professionals and telling you like how their road was. It was really, really, you can say motivational for me to really go there.
You guys have been a great success of the program. You know, we heard earlier that, you know, the mentees are learning from us, but we also learn. So Allison, things that you may have learned from mentees like Hugo and others?
Yeah, so many of the stories that we've heard have really resonated with me, and a lot of it was having those conversations and not feeling like you necessarily have to have the answer, but showing up as the caring adult that people were talking about earlier, and knowing even if you don't know, you can just be there and listen and say, well, how are you feeling about that, or let's explore some different options. And it doesn't have to be intimidating, and it doesn't have to be something that you're already an expert in, but just being there and learning from the students to say, hey, here's some perspectives I hadn't thought about. So many things that you may take for granted as just a baseline. Oh, I know how to do this, I've been through this, but that's valuable information that you can pass along and share.
So Yesenia, we've talked about a lot of years, and I know you don't like to talk about a lot of years because it associates with your age, but trust me, she talked about it earlier. Can you discuss, well, first off, why don't you give us an update of what's been going on with you since you graduated from high school?
Okay, so yeah, I was the guinea pig class. They were bribing us with like everything to show up, like food and everything. So it was amazing. But so since then, I have graduated from San Jose State. I graduated this spring. Thank you. Yes. But originally, I went to De Anza first, and then I transferred. But anyways, since then, I actually just landed a job, and I've been working with the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office for about half a month already. And so anyways, I work at Main Jail right now. Future it's a whole different city, so literally like there's signs to get everywhere. So I'm working my way up, but I'll be working on my master's.
Next up, a continuing education. Well, that's what we want to hear. Hey, so help us understand. So again, most people think of College Map, and initially it was, right, focused on getting folks from high school into colleges. We've obviously, now we're working on the other part, which is not just to get you guys there, but to get you successfully through that process. So, help me to understand, or help the audience to understand, how College Map is helping you how it helped you in the endeavor to get through San Jose State.
Yeah, well, Allison kind of touched upon that. It's little basic things that my mentors did, and I am not afraid to ask questions. And this is something that I didn't have when I first started Ernst & Young, and I've made a 360 transformation. No, I would be so shy to come up to anybody. And unlike Umberto or whoever lived in there you go. I actually live in Palo Alto. So I was always exposed to college. I was always exposed to all of these campuses. I live right next to Stanford, right? But I was never encouraged to go. I was that 1% in my Henry M. Gunn High School that were kind of tracked in a way to not go to college. We're put into like sports and stuff to, again, be tracked not to go to college. So when I met Ernst & Young and all of these wonderful people, it was like the little conversations that we had and encouragement that they gave me that, again, not my family gave me this type of encouragement, but coming from a working class, it was more of like, well, how is work? And not how was school? So it was these conversations that really, really pushed me, and the resources that they offered that seemed so basic to every other maybe kid in America, but for an AB 540 student like myself, it was not a basic conversation that I was having at a table at dinner. So yeah, it was little things like that, and go ahead.
Yeah, Yesenia, you touched on one piece that I do want to ask a question about. You can answer it, and you can answer it, but impact on your family.
Well, impact on my family. Well, I mean, I have two younger sisters. One of them is actually just came from Mexico, like probably 1 year ago, and another one who's still in Mexico with my mom. So it has a big impact. It's just the moving from a different country, and then like seeing that you went to university right away after high school. It's just big. It's like they're proud, and like you can see it in their eyes, even though like they don't tell you. You like like they're telling everybody else except you.
Yes.
But yeah, no, like my sister actually went to go visit me when I was moving to Sacramento, actually. And later that day, my dad was like, "Oh, she really liked this university. She's like thinking of coming here or something. So it's just like words of encouragement, like to say that, oh, you can go anywhere. Not specifically here, but if you want to go there, well, just go. But yeah.
And just for myself, it's still an adjustment, and I'm still adjusting to this whole professional aspect. I'm a fan of coffee now, and I never used to really drink coffee. like, and it's crazy. So it's still an adjustment coming from a working class. I sometimes go in and I'm just like, Mom, Dad, I'm not tired because I feel like I didn't do anything today. Because I'm used to my parents working really hard, and I worked really hard throughout college. So still an adjustment. But as far as my family, I mean, just like you go, I'm actually the first one in my entire family. Like literally cousins and everything. Like I'm the first one to graduate. So I now have cousins who come up to me and ask me questions, and then I put myself in my mentor's place, and I'm like, whoa, I'm here now. Like I'm giving advice and I'm providing these resources, and that's the amazing part. And I think that's what is still driving me to continue my education, because I know that people are still looking up at my success, like my little brother. And so it's definitely changed my whole family's view of what working is. We're taking more advantage of the resources that we have, and we're just yeah, it's definitely impacted in my family a lot.
So thank you for sharing. And to sum up, I'm asked a lot of questions, having been the executive sponsor for 7 years, kind of what I've seen and what it's meant to people. And for, again, the mentors, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of pride in the accomplishment of making a difference in the lives of these students. Many of the mentors continue to stay in contact with the students that they took through the process. As well as a lot of pride in the firm sponsoring such a program. I mean, I cannot tell you, and as Nancy mentioned, retention rates go up, their performance goes up as they're learning skills. From a mentee standpoint, we get a lot of the thank yous, obviously, from them being so successful for the programs. I am always touched by the parents, especially when we graduate the students out and we get a chance to have the parents and the younger siblings at the final event, the tears that flow, the thank yous that we get. And again, I think one of the key things, when I look at the success of the program and how important it is that our best referral sources are the parents trying to get their other siblings in, or these folks recommending people into the program. And, and me personally, on how it kind of impacted me and my life. Again, I'm proud of the fact that I get to work with all these wonderful people. But I guess the one example I would just give is one of the people from one of our earlier classes did not have a great GPA, and we do not go in the classrooms and teach the classes. Did not have a great GPA, but during the course of the 2 years, his GPA went up over a full point while part of the program. And again, we're not teaching anyone. He ultimately got into college and ultimately graduated in 4 years. And it's really the inspiration that the program, the hope that the program gave, the guidance that the program gave, that got that gentleman to be successful. So when I look at that, and I look at that individual, and I say, my gosh, if we can do that for that kid, we can do it for any kid if we just dedicate ourselves to making a difference. Thank you very much, everybody.
So thank you, guys. I get to close this down, and I would just say I'm so grateful to everyone who's been up here tonight. I have never been a part of sort of like a 2-hour exploration of mentoring from this many different perspectives and powerful voices. I appreciate you sitting for it. I know 2 hours is an eternity in today's day and age. And we're just incredibly grateful to have you all invested in the mentoring movement. I feel a little bit like a game show host to say, tell them what they've won, Bob. You've won dessert and a swell bottle. Conversations with all of the folks in the mentoring showcase and with the folks from the California Mentoring Partnership that you've heard from to help us take that to the next level. And we're just grateful to our host at LinkedIn and EY who helped us pull this off in the city. And thank you guys very much for everything.